Critical response. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we'll begin with Islamic evidences for Allah's existence, a case for the existence of Allah. The last two classes were pretty much establishing the foundations and the methodology as to how to approach the topic. And in many ways, it's important that we continue to add to that so that we have a proper understanding of what makes the Aqeedah, the belief of Islam and the Muslims, correct versus all other beliefs. Today, we'll talk about some, not all, the evidences for Allah's existence. For there are many ways to prove Allah's subhanahu existence, and some of those evidences are to accept the reality that Allah exists as a foundation, as we'll see. But the ulama, Ahl-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, they've come up with and established from the Quran and Sunnah, the Aql al-Sahih, the sound rational intellect, methodology or evidences to prove Allah's existence. And before mentioning some of them, we have to mention a key point, that there's a difference between the correct way of establishing Allah's existence and the incorrect way. They're not all the same. And the reason why this is important is that oftentimes you find in our society, especially online with YouTube and the da'wah scene, people trying to prove Allah's existence in an incorrect way. And ultimately that method is going to backfire, because that which is established upon falsehood is going to end up in falsehood. So the mutakallimun, those who are affiliated with ilm al-kalam, theoretic or rhetorical, call it philosophy, you can call it theoretical rhetoric, their methodology is incorrect. So Ahl-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, we don't follow those ways. So for example, some of the adillah, the evidences that they present are not correct, and we're not going to present them because they're wrong. They don't prove the conclusion, or they're weak, they have fundamental errors. So therefore we must establish it from the methodology of Ahl-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. I'm saying that from the beginning, because what's being popularized maybe in today's time and online and etc. is not the most correct way. So what are the ways to prove Allah's existence? Today we'll start off with the first evidence, the evidence of the fitrah, Dalil al-Fitrah. Dalil al-Fitrah is one of the most important and strongest arguments for Allah's existence, and it translates the evidence from the natural disposition of man, of humans, the natural disposition of humans, that people are born innately believing, accepting, and receptive to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the idea behind it. And we're going to present this one first, and we're going to get into it in some detail. And if we have time, we'll present the second one. And in total, we'll present only 3 evidences amongst many, just due to time, and also to show just some of those examples, and inshallah sufficient. At the end of the day, you don't need to have so many. So, like we said, the ulama, when it comes to the evidences, the one we're presenting first is the Dalil al-Fitrah. And we spoke about this before, some years ago, I believe it was 2023, at Ryerson or TMU University. We did a presentation on Islam and Allah's existence, and we presented the Dalil al-Fitrah at that time as well. So, inshallah ta'ala, we'll summarize from that. But before getting into that evidence, there is generally 2 ways the Quran shows and proves Allah exists. The ulama, they mention, when you look at the Quran, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran prove His existence to the people? It falls into 2 overarching ways. The first way, masrak al-ilzam. Masrak al-ilzam, which is the pathway of binding entailment or of binding conclusion. So masrak means path, al-ilzam means binding. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses rational, logical arguments against those people whose fitrah is corrupted. Whose fitrah is corrupted and they fall into a wrong way. Allah, He brings arguments to make ilzam, to force them, to corner them, to say you have to believe He exists. So that you can argue is the rational route. Again, we're going to see there's 2 routes, right? There are more generally, but the other need to follow many arguments. Masrak al-ilzam would be then if somebody has wrong understanding or corrupted fitrah, as we'll see, they grew up in a wrong, disbelieving household, or they have too much focus on certain forms of learning and scientific knowledge, and again, they're corrupted. You use these kinds of arguments to correct them and to return them back to the fitrah. The second way is reminder, to remind them of His ayat. So tadhkir, Allah reminds them bi-ayatihi, with His ayat. Why? This is for the person whose fitrah is sound. Okay, so he's going to see people are two categories. Fitrah is corrupted or fitrah is still intact. And you're going to notice the difference between the two people. So whoever's fitrah is corrupted, we're going to use the masrak al-ilzam, we're going to use logical, rational arguments to corner them, to bind them to believe that, look, Allah's existence is must. Because their fitrah is corrupted. Otherwise, the fitrah intuitively will conclude Allah exists. Whereas the person whose fitrah is intact, the awam, the laity, you just do tadhkir. You remind them of ayat of Allah. Ayat of Allah which are kawniyya, the universal signs of Allah. Ayat of Allah which are wahi, revelation, Quran wa sunnah. The mu'jizat, ayat of the anbiya wa rusul, dalal nabuwa, all that bring people to Islam. In fact, most of the lay people, in fact, and more regular people, whose fitrah is still intact, hasn't been corrupted. And again, how corrupted the fitrah can get depends on the person's experiences and upbringing. But generally, a lay person, you don't need to use all those rational arguments. Just to tell him, well, you think the sun comes by itself? Who's making it go? Come on. Could every makhluk lahu khaliq? He gets it. Fitrah is sound. But the problem, the people whose fitrah has been corrupted, is not going to work that easy. I mean, the fitrah, they won't see the Quran as a proof easily. So now that we know this, both of these methods are found in the Quran. But the first one we're going to start with the reminder of the signs. We're going to talk about people's fitrah is good. The fact that your fitrah is sound will prove Allah exists. And so it's very important, the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why they're so important. That's why some people, because they didn't understand this, Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah mentioned by reminding people that ayat of Allah is what the Quran does. Look at Allah's signs. Allah tells us to travel the earth. Take a look at His ayat, right? Why? So you can be reminded Allah exists. But today, when we think about arguments, we're like, okay, premise A, B, C. No, that's one tariq and there's another tariq. There's more than one way. So it's very important to understand how you can approach it. Before beginning, one more point. We said the Quran-based rational arguments, improving Allah's existence, are not correct. And then one of the reasons why is because they prove an unrestricted creator. They don't prove Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah writes in Majmu' Fatawa, volume 1, page 48, when he talks about the qiyas al-kulli, the kind of universal analogy that comes by way of these rational arguments of the kalam-based arguments. He says its fa'idah, its benefit, it's amrun mutlaq la mu'ayyan. It gives you an unrestricted conclusion, not a specific one. So it can prove to you there is a creator, but not Allah. You with me? That's one of the flaws we can see. All the kalam-based arguments, they get you to wajib al-wujud, a necessary existence. Who is that existence? It's Allah. So it's the universe. Of course, people argue we're going to prove it's Allah, but the problem is, you see how you did all that to get to what? Mutlaq, we need mu'ayyan, we want to prove Allah. So Ibn Taymiyyah says, as for the tariq ayat, using Allah's signs, which are found in the Quran, which are obligatory, and the fitrah of Allah, which is in His servants, this pathway gives us a specific conclusion. Means you prove to Allah, people, Allah exists, not just the creator. Allah, ma'asmahi wa sifati, with His names and attributes, the Allah that we worship. And the reason why it's important, Ibn Taymiyyah doesn't discredit their arguments in terms of its validity. He just says that their arguments are deficient. فقال وإن كانت طريقة القياسية الصحيحة, even though their route of analogy is valid, لكن فائدتها ناقصة, its benefit is deficient. So why then we should not focus on it? Because this is the problem. You can take somebody hours to the ringer, and all you got is wajib al-wujub. That's not good enough. A necessary existence. How you make it that next step with Allah? You see, we have to actually get to someone to say, here, evidence. By its evidence alone proves Allah. The faster, the better. The quicker, the easier. And that's why we're trying to use the more authentic methods, because they're stronger. So again, we're not denying that many of the arguments the ulama presented, even from those from the ilm al-kalam, there he said, tariqa qiyasiyya sahiha. It's a valid analogical route, but its benefit is deficient. Means we try to use a better one. So let's talk about the fitrah then. What is the fitrah? Why is it and how is it a proof? The fitrah, when we use this term, fitrah means the original natural state, the innate, original, normative disposition. This is the fancy language that they use. It means how Allah created us. The normal way, fitrah. Fitrat Allah, التي فطر الناس عليها. The fitrah which Allah has created mankind upon. And the ulama, when they talk about the fitrah, they say the way to describe it is to say the fitrah is an innate faculty. An innate faculty means it's a kind of quwwah. Faculty means a quwwah, an ability, the ability to to use. So innate means inside of you, innate faculty endowed by Allah, given to us by Allah, that inclines a human being to believe in God or Allah and to feel certain normative intuitions. In easy terms, it's an innate ability that pushes someone to accept and to incline to Allah and the deen of Islam. That's what it is. So it's not some kind of knowledge necessarily as much as a quwwah, although it has in it some types of present knowledge. Means, for example, 1 + 1 = 2. How do you know that's correct? Someone can say, give me the proof. I just told you 1 + 1 is 2. The fitrah says, khalas, that's correct. The fitrah has in that a natural conclusion like that. How do you know, for example, causality, cause and effect? It's amr fitri, it's put into us. Language, Ibn Taymiyyah is also fitri. The ability to speak. If you study each one of these, you find shocking, because Allah put it in us, and the only conclusion, as we'll see, is that if Allah didn't give it to us, we would have no explanation for that. So the fitrah then is an innate faculty and ability for a person which Allah has given us to incline us towards Allah, to knowing Him, to loving Him, to want to worship Him. That's the fitrah. It's natural because Allah put it into us and we're born with it. Now the proofs for it, ayah in Surah Rum, chapter 30, verse 30. That's kind of easy to remember. Chapter 30, verse 30. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the fitrah, and this is one of the foundational proofs for it, amongst others. So Allah says in the Quran there that the fitrah, right? Fitrat Allah, the fitrah that Allah has given, التي فطر الناس عليها, which is established people upon, لا تبديل لخلق الله. There's no change in Allah's creation. So here Allah is telling us, فطر الناس عليها, we've been created this way. And also the hadith, Abu Hurairah from Bukhari Muslim, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, every child is born upon the fitrah. Like كل مولود يولد على فطرة. What does that mean? Born with that innate faculty to not wanting, or to inclining, to knowing, to loving, and to worshipping Allah. Now, this argument, Dalil al-Fitrah, has been argued before by the ulama, but no one did it more strongly than Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he used this argument and he promoted it the strongest because he believed it is the strongest and the most authentic of evidence is found. The fact that they're already born. People are innately born to be theistic, to believe in the Creator. Khalas. That's how we are from. And to help us understand how we know this right now from the Quran, chapter 30, verse 30, Hadith Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Hurairah. Right? But then how about outside? Are there any other proofs to show this fitrah? So we know people, they look at children, they look at random people, lay people, they already have that in them. But recently, scientific studies have proven that this is the case. So Ibn Taymiyyah argued without looking at the science, just in the Quran and Sunnah, and what we know from the people's experience, that people are born with this fitrah. But recently, in the scientific world, it's called Cognitive Science of Religion, CSR. It's a whole branch of religious studies. Cognitive Science of Religion, CSR. They have proven that theism is innate. And this gives a very strong support to what Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah was already proving from the Quran and Sunnah. So we're going to see that the argument fitrah is found in the Quran, Sunnah, science. And we're going to come back to why we need this. It's rational, it's scientific, it's Quran with Sunnah. It hits all categories, right? Sources of knowing. So in CSR, Cognitive Science of Religion, they found a lot of studies. I'm going to talk about two of them to prove that people are, and children specifically, are innately theistic. They're not atheistic. Before, people used to believe this, that children are born blank slate, or people are born without beliefs and we're trained as we grow up. That's wrong. Now we know it's wrong. So Ibn Taymiyyah, when he argued this, he many places in his works, Majmu' Fatawa, Dar Ta'arud, Aql wa Naql, Rad' al-Mantiqiyin, many places he talks about the fitrah, and he says pretty much the fitrah has all these built-in functions which are part of its ability to discern right from wrong, and the most basic thing that the fitrah can find out is Allah's existence, because Allah put it into it. And so when you think about the fitrah, when you look at the Quran and Sunnah, it's clear. But let's look at science first to see what they say, and we'll come back to what Ibn Taymiyyah said. When you go to the CSR, the Cognitive Science of Religion, the studies are two of them, two of the most important studies. Number one, Justin Barrett, 2012 study, Born Believers. Right? It's a famous book. You can find it online, PDF. Justin Barrett, 2012 book, Born Believers. And here he proves that children are born innately believing in a creator. And a more recent study, which we'll cite 2019, Olivia Petrovich, she wrote a book called Natural Theological Understandings from Childhood to Adulthood, published by Routledge. This book is 2019. Petrovich, her name is, Natural Theological Understanding from Childhood to Adulthood. PDF is also available. That book is more recent. Both of them conclude theism, believing the Creator, is innate. Amrul fitri, it's built. And how do they do it? They studied children across the world, and they did these experiments. And each time they did these experiments, they found children, for example, Petrovich research in Japan, in the US, and other places. And he found places where belief in God is widespread, like the US, and Japan, where they believe in Shintoism, which doesn't have really big concept of God. Yet, all the children would give explanations that God exists whenever asked about who made this and where did this come from. None of them said, I don't know, out of nothing, chance, randomness. All of that is not, no child said. The reason why this is important, brothers and sisters, we're going to see that the conclusions they're finding as secular empirical evidence, this is empirical scientific evidence, big money is put into this, big research, who are academics, they concluded this. As Muslims, we already know this, but now we're getting supporting evidence. What are some of the conclusions they found? Young children across religious backgrounds believe in a creator. Believe in a creator. That's one. Children, irrespective of the religious background, instructions from the parents, share in a belief in God. Human minds are predisposed to monotheism, in that one creator God is responsible for creating and controlling the universe. Justin Barrett, page 87-90, Petrovich, page 106 and 92 to 106. Another one, children and adults can seek complete causal explanation to explain the observed world. That's very important. What does that mean? When you ask a child who made this, he's not going to tell you just the immediate cause. That's called proximate cause. Ultimate cause is the final, go all the way. Okay, so right now someone tells you who put the sun there. You're not going to say us or you. You're going to say, well, the final cause, Allah, the creator. The same if you say who made this table, okay, the manufacturer. Who made the manufacturer? Keep going. When you get to the final cause, that's called ultimate cause. Science doesn't deal with ultimate causes. Proximate. Right? How did the car work? Well, put this. Okay, that's proximate. You explain the mechanism. How about agency? Who made it? Well, we don't know. They don't go that far because they can't. So children, when you ask them who made something, they never give you the mechanism. They give you ultimate causes. Why? Amr fitri. Who made this? Like you ask child, why is the sky blue? He's going to say, Allah made it. Right? He's not going to say, oh, it's just like that. Right? It's a brute fact. No, children don't talk like that. These are learned stuff, guys. This is stuff we learn in school. Why am I saying this? All of this is showing what? That this is Amr fitri. What does Islam say? Every child is born upon the fitrah. Now, before we continue, fitrah is not Islam by itself. We're going to see. Fitrah is the capacity, receptivity to becoming a Muslim by acknowledging Allah, worshiping Him. It doesn't mean you're born with knowledge of Tawheed. You don't know that. You know Allah exists and He's one. You want to love Him, want to know Him. And we're going to explain what He meant by, because some people misunderstood what He's meant by the fitrah, and they think everybody's born with Arkan al-Islam. No, they don't know the Arkan al-Iman. They don't know that. But you know Allah is one, that He exists, that I have to love Him, I have to worship Him. I didn't make myself. Basic conclusion like this. Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah, he argues the same thing. He says Allah made bodies, right, amendable, means they're naturally there to get nourishment from food and drink, right? And if it were not for that, it would not be possible to nourish and nurture them. Just as their bodies have a power that differentiates between nourishing and harmful food, means the human body knows food that tastes good and is healthy and food that's not. It has even greater ability to differentiate between falsehood and truth. You see, how did the child know? And how do we as humans know which food is good and it's not? We didn't do tajriba, we didn't do a scientific study, deductive study, the whole world. Certain foods we can naturally see this is probably healthy and good for us, this is not. And it comes naturally. The same way it says you have that kind of quwwah, you have in you that faculty called the fitrah that lets you know haqqun and batil. So therefore, nobody is going to be born on a batil, believing in batil. No, doesn't work. He also mentions other places about, like the example of the mother. Let's give that example. He mentions, for example, like the example of a newborn and the mother. Right? Maybe I'll mention later. He gives that example. طيب. So Ibn Taymiyyah's conclusion with the fitrah is what the Quran and Sunnah say. We're born with this natural disposition, innate ability and faculty to confirm and to know Allah, to love Him, to want to know Him, that you know that He exists, that He's the Creator, not us. And this goes back to what we said before. That the Quran and Sunnah tell us this. We also know people's fitrah can get corrupted. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions that the fitrah can get corrupted just as the Rasul told us. Who makes a child Jew, Christian, or Magian? It's their parents. That's what the Quran and Sunnah tell us. Means a child is born upon the fitrah, and then they become a Jew, Christian because of their external environment. Tayyib, we're with you in that. Someone born in an atheist environment is going to become atheist. But he wasn't born that way. A lot of theists or atheists believe that theists or Muslims believe what they believe because they were born in a Muslim household and were trained this way. Now we learn scientifically it's not true. It's not true. Why? Because everyone's born with that same idea, that faculty that Allah exists. But the fitrah can get corrupted. What are some examples that corrupt the fitrah? We said childhood and upbringing, how you're raised. Hadith Bukhari, 1358, Hadith Abu Hurairah. So it's important to know that if somebody tells you, I don't believe in Allah, you already know where to look. His fitrah is corrupted. You got to get to the bottom of it. You ask him questions like, how were you raised? Mom and dad, are they atheists? He says, yes. He says, okay, I expected that. See? Or you go to school, higher education, scientific study, what do you study? You say, I'm a guy who doesn't know anything. You'd be like, he's not less likely because he won't even be able to understand this. That's another thing. You're going to see haqq is so easy, everyone can get it. A layperson, he doesn't know any of this. So why am I saying the child upbringing very important? Another example, shayateen, Hadith Muslim 28:65. Allah created upon Tawheed, the shayateen to change them from that. So shaitan's master plan and shayateen take you from the fitrah to corrupt it. By what? Shirk, kufr. Another example, Jahl Ibn Taymiyyah says. Another one, social pressure to belong to a group, like your environment. You just want to have following desires. So these things corrupt the fitrah. The good news is somebody's fitrah can get corrupted, but it also can be ignited. And how is that possible? You can nurture the fitrah through the Quran and Sunnah, wahi. It's very important. The wahi brings back hits the fitrah. That's why sometimes when you're talking to people, stop challenging their mind. Talk to their heart. Talk to their heart. Talk to their fitrah. Sometimes we're trying to ration with them. Ration is not good enough. Tell them, listen, whatever experience they're going through, you got to get to the bottom. And the wahi is very powerful, pierces the heart. Revelation, we said, taqwa. That's another one, taqwa. So when you look at how to get the fitrah, how it works, and how it also guides people towards Islam, when somebody's fitrah is sound, then he believes Allah exists, and he wants to worship Him and know Him. But it's not sufficient, right? As we see, there is a role of the wahi too, right? But when someone's fitrah is corrupted, it will lead him to what? Not worshipping Him, not knowing Him, denying Him even. And therefore, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that while it's possible people's fitrah get corrupted, the whole ummah or the whole world's fitrah cannot be corrupted. That's not possible. Fa'idah now that we understand a bit about the fitrah and how the research is proving this, the innateness of theism, a belief in God. Chapter 24, verse 35, Surah Nur. Allah says in the Quran, Nurun ala nur. Light upon light. If you go to the tafsir of the ayah, what does it mean? The nur wahi, when it hits the nur of the fitrah, hidayah comes. Pay attention. This is very powerful. Nurun ala nur. Wahi. Quran and Sunnah, nur min Allah, right? When it hits the fitrah, which is been corrupted or impeded, when it hits it directly, khalas, guidance comes. But when somebody gets the Quran and Sunnah, and there's a barrier, sins, covering it, shirk and kufr, the worst of sins, blocking the barriers to the fitrah, the wahi won't do much. Means he's not going to be able to penetrate it because he needs to sit on it, he needs to be sincere, he has to uncover that. Then this is why you find people who hear Quran and say, I don't believe. Don't think for a second this person, the haqq is the problem, it's them. Right? It's them. Why? Because if it was the truth not able to guide people or to penetrate truth, you wouldn't find as much believers in Allah and Muslimin as much as they are versus the amount of atheists. So you have to pay attention to the role of the fitrah in helping us also find out how we can help people. That's why when people go through traumatic experiences or difficulties, really what they need is the help to get to the fitrah. That's why the Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah argues that if somebody's fitrah is corrupted, what do? We need to give them sound, rational arguments. That's the person who needs the arguments that we're talking about today. As for the ami person, lay person, or person's fitrah is good, just hears the Quran, dua, dhikr, the seerah of Rasul, khalas, becomes Muslim, easy. Because its fitrah is there. And that's why the Sahaba became Muslim by just hearing the Quran. Till today it happens, right? How is that possible? You wonder. Where is all the argument? Nurun ala nur. Right? Wallahi, there are examples of many people, they hear the Quran, La ilaha illallah. Whatever I heard there, it just touched my heart. Of course, because wahy min Allah, Allah's words hit the heart Allah created. You see? So the problem we have today is we don't understand the idea of the fitrah. Sometimes we jump to trying to prove to everybody Allah exists through arguments, rational arguments, argumentation, which is not for everybody. In fact, it might not also be necessary. Now that we understand a little bit about this, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah also mentions something very interesting. He says, Rahimahullah, in Rad' al-Mantaqiyin, page 299, the more people need to know a thing, the easier Allah has made it for the minds of people to know it. The corresponding proofs. So that everyone needs to know Allah, right? So how did Allah make everyone know it? To the fitrah. It would not make sense. Everyone has to know Allah, and you can only get to Allah through rational argument. Most people are not PhD, masters, graduates, right? They don't know nothing. So how do they reach Allah? And that's one of the mistakes Ahlul Kalam, that they assume everybody has that capacity or the ability. No, most people are miskeen. They're lay people. Even amongst the atheists too, the blind followers, many of them. You asked him which book he read, nothing. He didn't read nothing. So we tell him, why are you atheist? Because of the environment. It gives you certain things. Okay, tell them, okay. So in Islam, if everyone has to become a believer in Allah, Allah He made easier. The bar of entry to belief is very easy. If somebody that has fitrah is intact, and Allah gave him on the fitrah to start with. And also the fitrah comes from where? The ulama, they discuss it. If you research more into it, the mithaq al-adami. When Allah took the mithaq, the covenant from Adam and all of us in Surah A'raf, that's where also the fitrah, the essence of it. Alastu bi rabbikum, we also qalu bala. So that covenant we all took from Allah, when Allah took our souls off from Adam, that's the essence of the fitrah, that way where it comes from. So no one can come Yawm al-Qiyamah saying, Inna kunna an hadha ghafilin. I have no idea. See, look how fair Islam is. Someone can come Yawm al-Qiyamah and say, I have no idea, I'm supposed to worship Allah. How is that possible? Your fitrah is there. And even if someone didn't have that, a corrupted Islam, we know they had fitrah, there's a whole discussion of those people. I'm talking about someone come and say, I never even knew Allah existed. No, it's not possible. It's not, right? That's not the case. So we have to understand how Islam is fair and very clear. Once we understand the argument, this is a summary of it, of course, this is much more detail, but you get the idea. What do we conclude with now? What do we conclude with is that we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists innately. It's proven that we're born believing in Allah's existence. Okay? So now, if you understand the gist of what I said, it leads us to some major topics now regarding the fitrah, because now you understand the gist of the argument. You can read more about it, but now let's talk about how it works more. The first point, how does the fitrah lead people to believe in Allah? So if I told you now, we already built with it innately, someone may say, how? How does the fitrah get you to Allah? Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah here mentions a lot of examples in Dar Ta'arud Aql wa Naql, but we're just going to summarize some of them. First, the fitrah, the natural disposition of a person, concludes that every effect must have one who gave it the effect, or every action has a doer, or every impact has one who impacted it. That's a natural conclusion of the fitrah. So that everyone whose fitrah is working, and everyone has one, they're born with it, it would always conclude that for every fi'al lahu fa'il, or every athar has a mu'athir. Every effect has an effector. Every action has an actor. Every makhluq lahu khaliq. That's the basics. So Ibn Taymiyyah said the fitrah by itself, as a human being, if you just sit alone, undisrupted, no barriers, it will naturally conclude that I'm not the source of my own creation, so therefore someone created me. That's the first one. Right? If anyone just sat down by himself, thought about it, did you make yourself? No. And if someone says yes, we're going to tell him, as Ibn Taymiyyah Ibn Qayyim said, okay, change the size of your head. Can you change your height? Assalamu alaikum, you didn't create yourself. And some people are coming very arrogant, right? Some will say, I think I made myself. Okay, no one's going to say that because it's irrational. But if someone did, we'll tell them, okay, then please change your height. You can't. Khalas, you didn't create yourself then. Basics, this is basics. Just in case. I know there are people, sometimes talking to people, they're not serious. They're really skeptical. We tell them, listen, you didn't create yourself. But once you know you didn't create yourself, the fitrah says, well, someone made me. That is what we're talking about. So, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Razi, others, they gave the example. A child, if you slap him on his head from behind, he's going to turn around looking for the person who slapped it. And it starts crying, right? Looking for the person if you can't find it. This is an example of causality, cause and effect. Something hit me, where's the effect? right? I got hit. Where's the cause? I feel pain. That's a child, and that's what part of the studies that they found, right, recently, that when you do this to children, you show them stuff, they always assume there's a cause. Causality is a fundamental effect of the fitrah. Fundamental. It's based on science, it's based on it. You can't do, anyone denies that one, it's in hot water. Causality is basic, cause and effect. So Amr Fitri, right? Okay, Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that children have this. That's one of the studies they found today. And children, when they know cause and effect, okay, I'm an effect, where's my cause? That's the Fitra, that's where you get to Allah. Today, the studies I just showed you, they said the same thing. Children, every time they think about their own self or things that they are created, they always give it causes to an agent. They always assume somebody made it, and they never say themselves or not something greater. Again, and we're going to see they're describing Allah. And specifically, they're using attributes that belong only to Allah. So that's the first way the fitrah gets you to Allah. Second way, at times difficulty. عند الشدائد, when things are hard, it's fitrah, our natural disposition leads us to turn towards Allah. Everybody. You're in a hot water, difficult situation, you just make a dua. You don't even think about that. Plane's going down, as the saying goes, there's no atheist in the foxhole. It's a famous saying. It just means the time of war, everyone's a mu'min. Because you need Allah. So when the plane is going down, everyone's, oh my God, right? Even the atheists, we know. And there's many stories of that. But why is that important? Where did you get that from? Who told you that? Amr Fitri, you just make dua. I'm in a difficult time. I need help. Another example would be, when you're making dua, you always raise your hands. Why? Amr Fitri, the whole universe, everyone looks up. Everyone does whatever they do, they're looking up. Why are you not looking down? Never. Amr Fitri, Allah is above us. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى هو فوق عباده. Allah has علو في الذات, علو القدر والقدرة, everything. We understand that fitriya, no one, even the animals, they always look up. You see, that's how the fitrah is already built in. These are proofs that the fitrah exists. And this is what some of the scientific evidence they found, right? And again, who mentioned that? Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah amongst others. Also Mu'allimi in his kitab Yusr al-Aqidah Islamiyya, page 54. Thirdly, the fitrah knows that belief in Allah is good and beneficial for life, and it's not harmful or falsehood. Means if the fitrah, if you had to make a decision, what's better, believing in God or not believing in it? Naturally, the fitrah says, yeah, believing in God has many benefits. Okay, I believe in God. That's a natural conclusion. Because we said the fitrah has the capacity to know what? Allah, right? And mostly Ibn Taymiyyah says the fitrah has that, like food and drink, how you know what's good and what's bad, what's tasty, what's not. The fitrah has an ability to know what's good for what's not. So if you ask anyone rationally, what's better? Your life, which will lead to a better life? Believing in Allah or not? The fitrah already knows. Allah's khalas. That's how the fitrah gets most people to believe in Allah. So these are just 3 examples of it, and there are many. So if somebody's fitrah is not obstructed, it will naturally conclude that Allah exists, that you want to know Him, you love Him, you want to worship Him, you want to get closer to Him. Everyone's with me so far? Very simple, right? And again, anybody, whatever age they are, and sometime in their life, that's what happened. They thought about these things, and that's what they concluded. For a new Muslim or revert, that's what they did. For a Muslim even, to renew their faith. And that's why we can see the fitrah naturally leads people. But when the fitrah is corrupted, it can't do those functions because the corruption has led it to wrong conclusions. And Ibn Taymiyyah gives the example of the sun and the eye. The eye has the capacity to see when the sun is out. But if there's a barrier blocking the eye, it can't see the sun. Beautiful analogy. Because the sun is nur, light, like the wahi. And the eye is the capacity to see, but it's got to hit the target. Some people, what's happened today, all the sins, their bad upbringing, their bias, hawa, desires, prevent them from seeing the haqq. Don't ever think the haqq is the mistake, it's them. Otherwise, there's so many people who are evidences who believe otherwise. وَالشَّاهِدُ شَاهِدْ مِنْ أَهْلِ. Their own members of the atheists became Muslim, many of them. And some of the best of them have recanted or fell into confusion. So how could it be that this person is upon haqq? Just remember, the haqq is stronger than anybody. But sometimes what happens is because some people don't accept it, we sometimes question the truth. That's a mistake. If I can't see the sun, that's whose fault? Either I'm blind, or I'm ignorant, or I need help, right? If I'm blind, it's okay. If I'm ignorant and I'm foolish, okay, I need help. But imagine today somebody's sick. Can he taste good food? If you tell me the same thing. If someone is sick, you give him soup, you give him the best biryani, he doesn't get it. It's like, oh, this is horrible. You're going to say, this is bad biryani? No, he's supposed to be sick, this guy. See? And the same way with someone who can't see the haqq because the eye has been blocked. And you have to understand this because when you talk to people, don't always expect just by the haqq alone will be enough because we know why. And as a side benefit, Rational arguments, as good as they are, one of the problems they have is that they don't prove that they cannot always guide people, because guidance is more than a sound argument. Right? When you study rhetoric and argumentation, there is method. You can have a sound argument, a valid argument, but there's something called cogency. Is the argument convincing to that person? You have to know that. Just because it's convincing and haqq, it's sound argument, doesn't mean it's cogent to somebody. What does that mean? It's all correct, but I don't agree. See, you have to understand this. When you read the papers and research, you look at them, everyone's arguing with each other, as if nobody has sound arguments. Everyone has some argument, but someone just to say, I don't see it, I don't see it. We tell them, okay, so what's the point of the argument then? Because sound argument, sure. Cogent, amrun nisbi, up to me to decide. This explains why some people could see the Quran, read it, listen to the Rasul's hadith and seerah, and still say, I don't know. No, just it's his choice. That's why he's culpable, he's liable in front of Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah if he accepted haqq or not. So you have to understand this point, because it's sometimes frustrating when you talk to people and you prove to them and he didn't get it. You're like, what's wrong with this guy? Some people are so ignorant, they say, I think it's the Quran. No, brother. This guy, he needs to clear the fitrah. It's still corrupted. He needs time. Now that we understand this, Petrovich, what was her conclusion of her research? Page 132 to 133. She says this, put differently, children's non-anthropomorphic representations of God encompass the characteristics that are not just hidden from view but are ontologically distinct from human characteristics. Natural theological understanding from childhood to adulthood thus seems to be remarkably consistent with the reasoning recurrent in history of scientific thought, and which can be traced to the earliest records of human yearning to understand the cosmos. Essentially, children, their beliefs about God are non-anthropomorphic. What does that mean? They don't see Allah to be a man or human. They see Allah to be transcendent. So when they say Allah made it, they always see them as somebody who's super knowledgeable, super powerful, which means, like we say, Allah is infinitely, maximally powerful, knowledgeable. And this shows you that if the children were following what they were taught, you would expect to find each of their interpretations found in a religion. But every child's explanation in the world is just like that. There's a creator, he has all these special qualities. That means then it's because it's universal, it's fitri. Otherwise, you would say an American child will give a god of Christianity, and the Japanese will give a god that's doesn't have any specific qualities. No, all they have similar ideas. And she concludes at the end of it that we have to accept that this atheism must be taken seriously. Because if you read the book, some of the stuff she talks about is very interesting, because psychology and anthropology and other subjects, they have a problem with these kinds of conclusions. And if you read the book, you'll see it's not, science can't easily prove these things. And I'm saying that because some people might be shocked. Scientific study, man. How come someone's accepting or rejecting it? We'll talk about that maybe another time. طيب, let's talk about a very important conclusion. How can we use the Dalil Fitrah? Now that we know what it is, how do we use it? Before going there, we have to talk about how do you make an argument in Islam? All right, because before continuing, we're saying the Fitrah is a powerful proof, right? Someone may say, what's the proof? So as Muslims, we have to know, when you argue with people, there are rules to the engagement. Maybe that's one of the biggest problems that we have today. When we talk to people, sometimes we're playing with our own rules, making up rules. If you want to be aqil, or intelligent, you have to have the methodology of the uqala. Manhaj istidlal. And what does that mean? A methodology of how does the proof work? Okay, watch this. Today, many of us, we know the Quran is the book of Allah, the hadith of Rasulullah is authentic, wahi min Allah. But that doesn't mean that every ayah hadith is being used correctly. Ulama say a qaida principle, صحة الدليل لا يستلزم صحة استدلال. صحة الدليل, of the validity of evidence, doesn't mean the validity of its usage. Just because you said Allah said, it's not the right way we understood the ayah. If I told you قال Rasulullah and bring you a random hadith and nothing to do with topic, you're going to say, I'm sorry brother, that's irrelevant. What happens sometimes when we talk to people, you say, yeah, I have an ayah in the Quran. No, you need the صحة الدليل واستدلال together. Now you need the proof plus the usage, the methodology. That equals guidance. And you can see today when you go online, you see people arguing, right? Everyone's off mark. One guy's bringing an ayah off topic, another one's bringing an ayah totally misunderstood. Another one is not even bringing an ayah, he's just bringing a ra'i. And you think, what kind of argument is this? This is wild. That's not a munaqasha ilmiya. That's a wild free-for-all. Today, a lot of what's online is free-for-all. Everyone's just going to say, let me try my best. And then they resort to fallacies and fighting, right? Finally, fist fights at the end, right? And this is very common, guys, because when you don't have it, when you have nothing left, you have to resort to fighting. If someone told you, okay, how did the dalil fitrah work? It's not enough to say, here's the proof, here's the scientific evidence. No. Show me how it gets to where you're going. You guys with me? Because someone may come and say, okay, I agree with the study. I don't agree with your conclusion. How does that prove Islam? Okay, wait, I'm not done yet. So that's how we said the principle, sihhatu dalil, the authenticity and validity of a proof, la yastalzimu sihhatu istidlal, doesn't mean that way you're using is correct. So you need to have good evidence and good method. What's one way we can talk to the atheists when we bring this proof? Atheists, they like science, right? We also accept science. If you present this from the scientific way, it's one of the easiest ways to get to them. And I did it before myself. You tell them, there's a scientific study that shows that theism is innate. Really? There's two of them. Here they are. And they're looking at you confused. They never read the study. And that's one of the reasons we find that they're blind followers. You never read these studies? I thought you did science. You see, this is a very good methodology. If you say, Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, I don't take that, I don't take it. Don't worry, I'm not done yet. I have Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, I have a science, I have aql, I'm not done. I have all. But why do we bring this evidence to them, the science? Because the qaida, استدلال بالدليل متفق عليه على مسألة متنازعة فيها. Bringing proofs or evidences which both groups agree upon, means sources that both groups agree upon, is a good methodology to follow. Means atheists like science, okay, let me start, I'll bring you science. That's what he wants, right? But just pay attention, he might not take it even after that, right? Because, they don't follow science. They're dogmatic. And the reason I'm saying that, imagine today someone told you, I believe in science. Okay, science says God is innate. You're looking at you like, astaghfirullah, really? And you're looking at him like, you never heard that? And I'm going to say openly, many of them didn't read that study, or they have their own opinions about it. Second, the language we're talking right now, we're using, it's not the language of Quran and Sunnah, it's the language of them. Right? We're talking about things like we just have some of the terminology we're using, right? And the reason why I'm using a lot of these terminologies on purpose. Well, number one, if you're talking to the people like this, people into these subjects, you have to speak their lugha, their language, istilahat, their language, their terminologies. Because when you talk to a layperson, khalas, you simple. If you talk to somebody who's into this stuff, you're going to use the language they use. Why? سَقَاعِدَ مُخَاطِبَةُ أَهْلُ الْإِسْتِرَاحِ بِاسْتِرَاحِهِمْ خَاصَّةً. You talk to the people of a certain terminology using their specific terminology. It has benefit. Means if I talk to them about, ultimate and proximate causes and agential causes and all this other stuff, the language they find in their papers, he started listening to me now. Because if he's in that field, if he's into that stuff. He was a Ami guy, khalas, just tell him like in a simple way. But what's happening today, sometimes you want to talk to somebody, and he's not going to understand you or agree. Because the first problem might be, is rapport, trust. See, a lot of the atheists, they think Ahl Sunnah and the Muslims are stupid or ignorant because you believe in God. That's what they think. They think we're low level, we're low tier. So look at you like, this guy's just praised, he doesn't know anything. And then when you use the language, he's using like, you look at him and say, well, you don't read this stuff? You have to know our deen al-ilm, brothers. Nobody more knowledgeable than a Muslim, nobody. Because we know our deen and we know other things too. We study this deen and we study other things. We're not just walking around blind followers. So when you talk their language, you're in their court. And they have to play on that rule. They're going to come and use some emotional arguments. Sit down, please. You have to name drop sometimes. You know this guy and this guy? You don't know? What are you talking about then? Just like if someone comes today and says, is this halal? Well, who said that? Which sheikh? Can't just say, I heard. No, sit down. There's ilm here. If you don't have sheikh, then what are you talking about? You say, I'm in the street. But today what's happening is with the people who have batil, some of them, they think they know even our deen. They don't know our deen, brothers. So we have to know our deen, but we have to know the istilah too. It's a valuable tool. But if you don't know it, no problem. You just use arguments. Let's finish now by summarizing our argument. How do we use the fitrah as proof? We're going to use it two ways. One way, we're just going to establish the fitrah is proof alone. We don't need proof. The second one, we're going to use it as a rational argument. And the reason I'm saying this, going back to minhaj istidlal, it's not sufficient for us to talk about Allah bidun ilm. So for example, if I told you fitrah proves Allah, the first question someone's going to ask, how does the fitrah prove Allah? Okay, here we go. Number one, the fitrah is a natural disposition, right? Therefore, you don't need proof. We're arguing that the innate disposition of all human beings is believing in God. Correct? So we're not going to escape any proof. The origin is that we're already born believing God exists. So that's it. It's a properly basic belief. Other words, it's axiomatic. It's ilm al-daruri, we call it. Ilm al-daruri means it's like 1 + 1 = 2. causality, cause and effect. Belief in Allah is like that. So if someone says, what's the proof Allah exists? You don't have to bring proof. You're going to say, actually, it's a default setting that everyone believes in atheism. I have to ask you why you don't believe in Allah. That's what you can tell them. That's the first way to do it. Because what's the origin, guys? People believing in Allah or not? They are, right? Khalas. So ask the guy, why don't you believe in Allah? You see, we have to play offense. Sometimes we're playing defense. Why is he asking you the question? Turn around and say, last time I checked, scientifically, everyone believes in God. That's it. So I'm going to ask you why you don't believe. Or it's like someone saying, what's the proof 1 + 1 = 2? What's the proof cause and effect? You can look at him like, you're looking for proof for ilm al-daruri. Ilm al-daruri, brothers and sisters, is the proof that's in the fitrah. There's no dalil for it. It is the self-dalil. So if someone told you A and B, time, yesterday, today, tomorrow, what's the proof for it? Anyone who asks for proof is lost already. It's ilm al-daruri. Yesterday is yesterday, today is today. And tomorrow is tomorrow. You have proof for it? There's no proof. Ilm al-daruri. It's a necessary axiomatic knowledge. So we're going to argue the first way. Allah's existence is axiomatic. Khalas. It's a properly basic belief. That's what they call it. It means I don't need proof. Allah exists as origin. Like everything else the fitrah tells us. I want to ask you now why you think it's not correct. See, that's the easiest way. That's what Ibn Taymiyyah said. The strongest way is that way. Why? Because it's the truth. So why am I saying this, brothers? If you ask someone today, prove to me yesterday happened, you're going to look at him like, is this guy okay? Right? So if someone says to you, Allah exists, قُلْ أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكْ. Is it doubt in Allah? Same way you look at him. Are you okay? Allah exists as asl. Because we know if we say He doesn't, so many problems are coming. And this is a very powerful way to do it. Let's say someone doesn't accept that argument. We can bring now some rational ways to use it. And before continuing, think about this for a second, brothers and sisters. Just like nobody has a problem with cause and effect, or with other uniformity of the universe and all these basics, why is Allah's existence problematic? Who said it's problematic? These people who don't believe in this, because as we look deeply at this, we see they're coming from the angle that belief in God is not innate. But we just said it's innate. So just like causality is innate, mathematics is innate, then belief in Allah is innate. Khas. Second way, we can make the dalil fitrah into proof. The ulama say the dalil fitrah is not really a dalil by itself. It is actually a way to make a dalil. It can become a dalil, but it's not dalil by itself. Because what is the fitrah again? The natural way of concluding, the natural receptive faculty. It's not actually a proof by itself. And the reason I'm saying that is because some ulama say, is it dalil or is not a dalil? And some ulama say we can make a dalil just in case. We can formulate it into a dalil. So let's give some examples. Dr. Abdul Suwaidi, and if you go to yaqeen.net, he has a nice article. Dalil fitrah, right? Again, Dr. Abdul Suwaidi, we talked about his book before. Right? He's expert in this field of atheism. His PhD, we already cited before. Go to yaqeen.net, not the other yaqeen, guys. Yaqeen.net, the proper one. Right? This one has a nice article. Dalil fitrah. In there, Dr. Abdul Suwaidi, he puts, you can say like a simple argument for all the dalil fitrah. I'm going to read it, the argument, 3 points. The first point, first premise. Acknowledging Allah's existence is a necessary knowledge in everybody. That's the first premise. اعتراف بوجود الإله, acknowledging the existence of Allah, who is perfect, is علم ضروري لكل إنسان. It's a necessary knowledge for everybody. Everybody knows علم ضروري. علم is the two types. علم الضروري وعلم المكتسب or نظري. علم الضروري, like 1 + 1 = 2. علم المكتسب or نظري is all the theories that we have after that base on it. Right? So for example, like the Big Bang, علم نظري. It has a lot of science, a lot of calculations, a lot of fundamental axiomatic knowledge to get there. علم الضروري, you don't need proof for it. Cause and effect, you can't tell me to prove that. If I tell you, are you who you are? Right? We don't need to prove that, right? Like you are you and he is he. Right? Contradiction is nonsense. These are علم الضروري. Okay, second premise. Every knowledge which is necessary, and this is very important because علم الضرورة, he's talking about here علم الضروري, right? Every necessary knowledge, it must have a وجود واقعي خارج ذهني. It must have an existence outside in the real world. Now pay attention here. علم الضروري, we said it means necessary knowledge. But he's talking about here the number one necessary knowledge is Allah's existence. And we're going to see how he got there. So he's saying every necessary knowledge must have an existence in the real world. It's not just in the head. Means how, if I told you Allah only exists here in the head, No. He exists in my head, in my heart, my beliefs. Therefore, He's real. The conclusion, therefore, Allah's existence, right, the existence of a perfect, complete, all-powerful God who exists in the real world is a reality. How did He get from 2 to 3? Allah's existence is ilm al-daruri, the number one of all necessary knowledge. Because without it, there is no knowledge nor you. I want you to understand what ilm al-daruri, how powerful Allah's existence is. If I told you Allah did not exist, you don't exist. Mathematics has, on all the sciences we have to have no foundation. Morality doesn't exist. The universe doesn't exist. But you see how, if you say Allah's existence is up for grabs, no. Allah's existence is known to the heart and fitrah because He really exists. And the reason why this is interesting is because if you want to say Allah doesn't exist, everything else doesn't. Everything else, khalas, is gone. That's why the atheists, the biggest problem they have, once they removed Allah from the equation, there is nothing that has actual meaning and reality. So that's one way to use ilm fitrah. Again, if you go to this article, you can read it, right? If you want more details. Let's give a second way to use it. I'm going to give you an easier way. You can make an analogy, qiyas al-awla. Qiyas al-awla in Aqeedah means that the analogy of preponderance. Qiyas is more than one type. Qiyas al-awla, it means if something is true for something else, and it's more true for something else, more deservedly. Min bab al-awla or qiyas al-awla. So let me give you an example. If we accept that our mind, our faculties, give us truth. You guys know everyone believes our minds give us true knowledge, right? I think so. Everyone believes that, right? Our mind will give us true knowledge, right? Everyone believes that, even though we have no proof for that. You know the problem evolution has, evolutionary science, they can't prove that our mind is even working correctly. Allahu A'lam, why does our mind have to give us right answers? Evolution just says your mind gives you whatever you need to survive. So everyone believes that their mind is working correctly, right? Even though they have no proof to prove that the mind should be reliable. But I want to say something here. If we accept that our minds and our faculties operate with sound, reliable outcomes, then the innateness of Allah's belief which is a byproduct of that faculty, is more deserving to believe in. Means if I told you today, whatever your natural sound intellect concludes, like 1 + 1 is 2, cause and effect, naturally fitrah agrees to this, right? Therefore, everything that comes from that, the byproduct, should also be correct. What's one byproduct of fitrah? Allah. Language, math, cause and effect, Allah. Why that one is rejected and this one is accepted? So we're going to say, min bab al-awla, qiyas al-awla, if you accept that your fitrah can produce these reliable outcomes, Allah is existing, min bab al-awla, more deserved. Allah is true. Because without it, you don't have math, you don't have foundation for language, no morality, no nothing. So example, scientists all use cause and effect. If you ask them what's the delil for cause and effect, he's going to say, well, it's natural. And okay, fitrah, right? The fitrah also says Allah exists. Why don't I accept it? He'll be like, well, I didn't prove it. Well, you didn't prove a cause and effect. You see where I'm going with it? If you ask them, physicists, you guys use all the mathematical calculations to prove the Big Bang. How did you get math? How do you know the math is the language for the world? You say, well, it's natural. It comes intuitively. Okay, and that intuition made you disbelieve in Allah? Ibn Taymiyyah says something so interesting. He says you can't use ilm al-daruri to refute or to use ilm al-nadari, theoretical knowledge, to prove necessary knowledge. It's impossible. See this? If I told you today I have a big scientific theory called evolution, to say Allah doesn't exist, it doesn't work. Because it's based on ilm al-daruri. And Allah is ilm al-daruri. Cause and effect is daruri. And he's going to use it to form evolution to disprove Allah, which is also daruri. I'm sorry, that's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. You can't use long scientific mathematical equations to disprove the one who made math. All right, you guys with me? That's the essence. That's what Taymiyyah said. Wallahi, it's a genius argument. You see, the uqala guys, our ummah, our ulama are very intelligent. This is what's happening today, long-winded. Based on what? Unproven scientific empirical foundations, which are going to deny, the result is going to deny something which itself is also foundational. How can Allah not exist, but math, language, cause and effect, evolution all exist? Impossible. Because Allah's existence is a byproduct of the same faculties that produce other ones. Min bab al-awla, qiyas al-awla, more like Allah deserves. You guys with me? That's one way to argue. A third way, let me give you another way. Sabr wa taqseem, let's use classification. Science has proven all the universe, all the humans, in the world, majority of them, or again all of them we're going to say, or innately theistic. They all believe in one God, right? Where do we get this from? What's the source for it? So now we're going to give the conclusions. The fact that I, you, every child in the world, when they're born, believes Allah exists. The most of the world today believes Allah exists. Most of the people in the past believe Allah exists. We have to find out why everyone shares the same origin. Let's use classification examination. We have outcomes. Number one, this belief, universal belief, is coincidence. That's option one. All the world before, people before us, people today, and all the children, coincidentally all believe Allah exists. Everybody's with me? And would anyone accept that argument? I'm talking about the source. Why every child, a child in Japan, child in Europe, child in America, all believe Allah exists? Coincidence? Option two, it's all an illusion. It never happened. No one believes that. If that's true, then the science is wrong. Third one, somebody or a creator who's transcended has designed it this way. That's the correct answer. So that's the only three sources we have. If someone told you, can you please explain to me why most of the world believes in Allah and most people are not atheists? An atheist will say, well, everyone's just blind following, ignorant. That's what they want to tell us, right? Everyone just follows their dad and mom. And you don't? That doesn't make sense. That's not a logical, tenable thesis. Doesn't make sense. Everybody's an idiot, but you're smart. That's what they want us to believe. So what's a better answer? Everybody guessed and got the same answer? Everybody woke up one day and believed Allah existed? Or maybe everybody's naturally supposed to believe Allah exists because Allah put it in there. Which one sounds more correct? That's called the argument of examination classification. In the Quran, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ خَالِقُونَ use the same logical argument. You guys with me? So if you ask someone today, why we all believe killing is bad? What is someone going to tell you? Oh, everybody came together and they wrote down the contract together. No. Oh, we don't believe in good or bad, it's a lie. Or thirdly, Allah put in us, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. There's a proof. Allah inspired everyone's nafs to believe in good and bad. Khalas. That's why killing is bad in Canada, in America, in Europe, Africa, Asia. So when we told us atheists, why morals are objective? He'd be like, I don't know. So that's not a good answer. We need to find out that at the end of the day, Allah made everyone born this way. This argument, brothers and sisters, is enough to prove Allah's existence. We don't have to continue to bring more. But this is why I'm going to mention this argument today and next week another one. Conclusion. There are some responses to this argument, but we don't have time to go into in detail. But the summary is that, what are the outcomes? What are the outcomes of this argument? Number one, atheists, even though they claim to follow science, don't accept the innateness of Allah's studies. They don't accept this. So why don't they accept it, brothers and sisters? Why don't they take this proof? Either number one, they don't know, or number two, they're actually not followers of true science. They're dogmatic. They believe in religion, which is called atheism. You see, everybody thinks the atheists are so rational. Here you go. You can test yourself. Bring these two studies and say, Bismillah, you're going to believe in Allah now? You're like, no, I can't. So why? I thought you believe in science. Isn't it scientific? And we can tell them, can you replicate a response against it? What's your arguments against it? Sometimes you're going to be shubuhat. This is science. I don't want your dhann yet. You're not even a scientist. So if someone were to ask them, why don't you believe in it? Because it goes against his belief. That proves most of them, a lot of them, are dogmatic. Means they believe in their beliefs blindly. You guys with me? Because if I told them, قال الله قال رسول, you say, I don't believe. Science, I don't believe. Rational, I don't believe. Khalas, then what do you believe in? You follow your hawa. Another note. If he says to you, I don't believe in it because there's another scientific study that opposes it, you're going to say, mashallah, that's what I wanted to hear. The other science that says otherwise. But these are recent studies. So what are we going to tell you? If science is so speculative, how can it be dalil aslan? Is science qat'i or dhanni, guys? Are these science qat'iyat or dhanniyat? Are they definitive or speculative? Speculative, khalas. You're going to use speculative knowledge against ilm al-daruri? Allah, I see, these are arguments someone can't run from. You can't run from this. He say, oh, I found another study that doesn't agree with you. Tayyib, 2 studies now. What are you going to do? Science can't get us anywhere. It's going to go here, go in there. Haqq, it's wahid. You're telling me a speculative study says Allah doesn't exist. Another one says does exist. Allah's knowledge, ilm al-daruri. How can science prove? How could the makhluk say the khaliq doesn't exist? Where did the makhluk come from to begin with? But you see, what they'll do is they'll look for other studies. Good. That's what I want. I want to show you that science is not dalil to get you to Allah anyways. It wasn't. Third, you'll find that some of them, once they find out that there's a scientific study that's proving that the innateness of Allah, the presumption of atheism, the argument, the burden of proof rests on who? In Islamic Aqidah, the burden of proof rests on the claimant. Who, if you're making a positive or negative claim, الدليل على المدعي. That's a qaida in Islam. If you say something doesn't exist, عليك دليل. If you say something exists, عليك دليل. Atheists say I don't believe because I don't know, you tell me why. No. Anyone who makes a claim, positive or negative, عليه دليل. Upon him is evidence. So now, science has said God exists innately. طيب, who has to bring the burden of proof? Immediately it's them. You see, it gives you the quwwah. Sometimes they throw the ball in your court. Why do you believe in God? I don't know. Why don't you believe in God? قُلْ فِي اللَّهِ شَكْ. You tell me. And watch how he's going to tell you some jahl. Oh, this and that, and people are dying. This is not ilmi. This is emotional. I want to know knowledge base. What you got? Because some of them say I'm rational. طيب, so why are you making emotional arguments? Experiential claims. Something happened to you. طيب, I feel sorry for you, and I hope things get better, but that's experience, not dalil. I want something objective, scientific. Come on. Some of them might appeal to things like anecdotes. They say, what's anecdotes? Ara. I know somebody, qissas, I have qissa too. Right? So you see what I'm saying here? You have to put into the warrant who's going to prove it? Anyone who makes a claim. Thirdly, the Quran and Sunnah already said that Allah's belief is innate. Science is proven the same. Is anybody shocked here, guys? Are we shocked? This is just one example today how Quran and Sunnah strong they are. And the problem today with those young youth who are atheists in our community who are doubtful, they're ignorant of Quran and Sunnah. Alamat al-Sa'di, he writes in his kitab, the book on atheism, one of the causes of ilhad, atheism, is ignorance of the Quran and Sunnah. You have to know that, brothers. Most people are ignorant. That's why when you go to the youth, many of our youth, you go to university, you say, I have doubts about Allah. Just know he doesn't know Allah, he doesn't know even science, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know dunya wala deen. Because if you told him, how did you get to that conclusion? He read something online, he watched a video. That's not knowledge. We're talking about, do you read papers? Do you compare the Quran and Sunnah? Do you do a proper study? And this is why atheism, we said before, it's not always based on knowledge. There's a qaida the ulama mentioned, Sheikh Salih Sindi and others, Ash-shahawat sabun al-shubahat. Shahawat, desires, are the soap for desires, for the doubts. Shahawat are the sabun, this is a soap for the shubahat. Means first you have a desire, then you get a doubt. That's how most people operate. So he's going to walk around, I'm so smart, I went to university. We all did, okay? And you have doubts about Islam because you don't know Quran, you don't know Sunnah, you don't know science, you don't know math. That's why Francis Bacon, the atheist, or at least you could say non-believer, okay, so he believed in God, but he's not a traditional believer. He said a little bit of science make a person atheist. Sir Francis Bacon, guys, the scientific method, those who study science history know him. He said a little bit of atheism makes you, a little bit of science makes you atheist. Okay? You have to know that, a little bit. So when you see people today say, oh, I found the Quran is wrong, you're going to say, La ilaha illallah. We already told you that, four brothers. Anyone who says the Quran is a mistake, just know 100% is jahil. There's nothing in the Quran, he knows nothing, he knows nothing. There's a guy, he wrote a book against the Quran, he doesn't know Arabic. PhD. He found mistakes in the makhtutat, kayf, and he can't read it. This is what's going on today. I want to finish now. وجه السبعون. Ibn Sa'di writes the 70th way. أن من أكبر أسباب الإلحاد الإعراض عن علوم الدين. الله أكبر. أن من أكبر الأسباب, from the greatest أسباب الإلحاد الإعراض عن علوم الدين, is turning away from the religious sciences. People today come and say, why are you guys studying all day Quran and Sunnah? This is why. So we can help our youth become good Muslims. Anybody who has doubts about deen, they don't know it, brothers and sisters. That's the problem. They always think they know. They don't know even the fundamentals of the deen. So don't be surprised if they don't know fundamentals of other sciences. But if you looked at today's subjectives by itself, it should inspire you to learn more, study more. But this is one proof. So sometimes someone asked you now to summarize, what's the proof Allah exists? Amur fitri. It's a fitra issue. We already innately believe in Him. You have to ask them why Allah doesn't exist according to your opinion, and you can bring proof. Inshallah, we'll stop with this week and much. Next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about another proof, bi'idhna ta'ala, and we'll continue from there. Anyone has any questions, inshallah, after the salah, inshallah. Subhanak bihamdik.